Hello everybody and welcome to another video. As many of you know, quite recently I transferred to Blackgate. Previously I was on a server called Emery Bay, which for a long time did okay, especially in World vs World it did okay. However, for this tournament, this Swiss style tournament that's currently going on, many of the guilds between the season break transferred off, and it's basically the very bottom server on NA. I transferred off. This didn't bother me, especially with mega servers, but I did transfer off of it when I was in World vs World trying to do something. I believe it was my meta, and it was literally empty. It was a complete ghost town for a long time. I was not playing at peak hours, but it was really depressing to see. I'm now on Blackgate. Blackgate has always been the contender, well, for a long time, for the #1 spot. Absolute best sort of World vs World server. Won the previous tournament and usually wins many of their matchups. The thing is, they're currently getting 2v1, so our victory is not totally assured. And the main reason, frankly, I came to this server was because the guild that I'm currently running with were mostly based there. This does have one cool side effect, that I can now play World vs World and experience what it's like at Tier 1. I'm recording this video just a couple of minutes before reset. I've never really done this. I've never bothered going into World vs World just before reset, and I figured this could be an interesting experience and something I'd like to share with many of you who also don't pay much attention. I'm curious how it will feel. Most of the time when I've experienced World vs World so far, even as a part of Blackgate, has been towards the end of the week where the matchup is already decided. As far as I'm aware, really the actual fight doesn't go on the entire week. Usually it's decided by maybe the Tuesday, the Wednesday, or even the Thursday. The real fights, the big stuff, the fun stuff supposedly happens at reset and early after that. My understanding is largely we're going to have like a guild each picks a different borderland. I'll be running with one specific Blackgate guild, and I just want to see how it will go. I want to give you guys an impression on, in terms of how fun it is, but also other things like how much loot you really get. Everyone's always like, oh, I got so many world ranks at reset, so I'm going to be running in there and seeing just how much loot we do get, and give you guys a bit of an update on how this kind of element of the game feels. For the video, also, I'd like to discuss, touch on, just for a second too, some of you may know that I scrapped a healing power video recently. I'm looking for opportunities. I want to use it. So, since I spent so long in the trinkets and stuff, so I'm actually going in there on my healing power stuff. This is mostly because I don't want to be in there on my Zerg stuff. Even outside of reset, I have tried World vs World on Zerg stuff, and as an Elementalist, it doesn't go too well. So, I'm going to be in there on my Magis, Clerics split. I'm fully Ascended Clerics, except for this one ring. I'm fully Exotic everywhere else with a Legendary Cleric Staff. I'm going to be on Staff Hills, and just the idea here is I'll get the most use out of these big fields. Yes, they may only be 5 targets as people are wandering through them, but it should affect more if people are constantly moving. And, I don't know, I feel like this maybe could turn the tide of battles. Maybe. We'll see. This will be the point. I'm sure that I'm wrong about that, and I'm just going to feel utterly useless. Traits-wise, I'm doing something kind of interesting. I really want to take the new trait, which is healing done to allies is increased by 25%. Very cool idea, but by taking this, it means I can't get Evasive Arcana, which I do think I value higher. But for playing with this, that's what I want to go for. The main one that I think is going to be strong for World vs World is going 4 in Earth Magic, which is when I swap to Earth Attunement, I grant stability to myself and my allies. As far as I'm aware, there's a lot of pushing in Zergs. You'll be tightly stacked on your commander, they'll be tightly stacked on theirs, and at some point you're going to charge one another and clash. At this point, many Elementalists will be dropping stuff like Static Fields, which can really hurt the progress of your Zerg if they don't have stability. So many commanders call out, hey, pop stability now, and for me that means I get to swap to Earth Attunement and I'll pop this stuff, and hey, I've got a bit of boon duration as well on there from my runes and from going in Arcane. So that's sort of the idea, that's what I'm running with. I think it'll be kind of fun. I'm going to have some World vs World boosters on. I'll let you guys know how it's kind of going as the experience. The first part of all of this is as soon as reset happens, I need to come up to one of these lovely gates. I believe I'll be going to the blue one and spamming F. So in the name of not boring you guys to death, I'm watching that, I'm just going to cut. Okay, I'm back. The footage in the background from now on will be an assortment of clips from what I experienced today. I was playing for maybe just under an hour or so, and in general, I had an awful lot of fun. It's not quite something you experience anywhere else in the game. I was talking recently about how it reminded me a lot when I had a previous experience where basically we were just farming players for bags outside our spawn for a long time, that it felt a lot like some of those hardcore PvE farms. There's very little challenge in it, and I guess this could be because I profiles, running with a reasonable group, but you're sort of just running through trying to get as many tags as possible before things die too quickly. It's funny, so many Wild vs. Wilders don't seem to like the down state, and this is like my saving grace for this. Some players get instantly spiked out because they're out of position, and then you get that beautiful extra health bar, which is your opportunity to at least get a single tag on them before they go fully defeated. I'm not entirely sure how true to the regular experience I can still say my experience of World vs. World in Tier 1 can be so far, because there's still a 2v1 going on. For those who are completely out of the loop, that because of the way the tournament is now being run, which is Swiss style, this has really opened up big opportunities for servers to team up against a single one. Currently there are 3 main contenders in Tier 1. There is Blackgate, where I'm on, there is Tarnished Coast, and there's Jade Quarry. There are some others that hover around there too, but Tarnished Coast and Jade Quarry in particular have had a very formal alliance this World vs. World season in order to push Blackgate out. And I've got to say, that's what a lot of the conversation seems to be about among people in World vs. World, about how generally it's either unfair or no longer fun. From a Blackgater's perspective, it means we have constant fights all over the place. And as I said just now, because I found many of these, I've been on the winning side, where I've been on the Zerg that's wiping the others. This means an awful lot of fun. But no one on Blackgate is fully satisfied with the situation right now, because while there is good farm, and I guess it's kind of fun to tag players and kill lots of people, at the end of the day, why are you playing World vs. World? Just for the shinies, or because you actually want some server pride and you want to see your server do well? It's funny, I've had quite a pessimistic view about this community for a long while. The idea that really Guild Wars 2 players only want the shinies and there is no more depth to it than that. People just want loot, they want money, and they want good skins. Well, that can't be true. Many people on Blackgate are very disappointed with the way the season's been going. It requires a lot of dedication from them, many hours put into the game, and yes, they're getting bags, but that's not enough for them. They're not fully satisfied. And on the other side of the road too, people aren't satisfied either. If you're a member of Jade Quarry or Tarnished Coast, there are some people, many people I'd suppose, who are really happy. Yeah, look, their server's going to do well. They're going to get lots of rewards at the end of the tournament. However, the actual gameplay for them is boring as all sin. Take my footage right now as an example. The entire hour that I was playing World vs. World tonight, at reset, before the matchup should be decided, when everything should be to play for, what was happening on the maps? We had a single place. We were defending Bay. The entire time I was in World vs. World, we were defending one location. Why was that? Because the other two forces had already muscled us out of the entirety of the rest of the map. There were loads of people in TeamSpeak saying, oh, they're such idiots, why are they still fighting? Oh, I admire the enemy's perseverance. But really, can you blame them? What else do these people have to do? They would like to play World vs. World, they enjoy the gameplay, yet they already own the entire map, and they're being told by their commanders and their guilds not to fight half of the targets that they have available to them. So they have one area they can go for, Bay, which they can't take because we're defending it with all of our might, and it's just constantly running into the very few targets they have available to them and wiping on them. How is that fun gameplay for those people? And it's causing people to quit. There have even been guilds on Jade Quarry and Tarnished Coast in their entirety who have now swapped to Blackgate because yes, they may be losing the season, but at least there are fights to be had and fights to be won. Overall, everything seems kind of messed up. The devs have come out with a statement saying this is not what they intended for World vs. World. They always envisioned the idea of small alliances occurring. This is one of the joys of a three-way battle. In theory, no one should ever be the complete king because the other two can gang up on them, but with the current way that it's working, it's not fun for anyone. And the devs have seemed to have recognized this. Don't forget, they are players themselves, and any World vs. Worlders working for that company will see what a dismal state their Tier 1 gameplay currently is. This is the very top of the range, and people aren't having as much fun as they should be. I don't know enough about the game type to suggest a real fix, but I do think people might be focusing on the wrong area. I hear a lot of conversation about the fact that the Swiss-style tournament is the main fault. They need to change the way that the tournament runs. It needs to be ran differently, and so in this way, this kind of thing won't happen. People won't have that incentive to team up, but I think I'd take a slightly different angle. I quite like the idea that there is politics and that there is allegiances going on. It's just that the gameplay itself needs to stop them being so strong. If Jade Quarry and Tarnished Coast can have the coordination to team up in that way, I think that should be kind of a fun facet to World vs. World. But the gameplay should make it so that Blackgate or any other server that's being singled out has opportunity to fight against it. Where they're building an alliance in this way, it should open holes in their strategy that someone else can take advantage of. Currently, World vs. World has no way of incorporating that kind of thing, but I think if I was the devs, that's what I'd be looking at, rather than trying to change the way the tournament functions every time. Because no matter how they set it up, there's always going to be a fault somewhere. There is no one-size-fits-all solution that works across both NA, EU, and then within all the individual brackets on either of those regions also. Anyway, back to my experience just here. As I say, I had a lot of fun. It was very cool listening to the way people set up their Zergs, how they call for null fields and static fields and might and veils and swiftness, and it was a different way of playing my Elementalist. However, I do not think the build I went into was particularly viable. It's funny because one of the people in my Zerg today got an ascended chest box of Magi's armor, or it was a Magi's weapon, and everyone was outright saying, oh, this is terrible, this is really bad. Magi's was what I was running on my healing power Elementalist here. The stats on it, in case you're unaware, are healing power major stat. I was going for a healing power build, vitality, and precision. The precision I didn't care about, but I did rate the vitality very highly. As an Elementalist, you have very low vitality, and I wanted to bring that up to spec. However, your damage is insanely low. Too low if you care about loot or getting tags. For reference, I was critting for about 500 damage as a common occurrence on lava fonts. In other areas of the game, I will crit between 5 to even 10k on a lava font. I'm doing less than 10 times lower damage I would be on another spec. And because of this, I found it very hard to get loot. The Elementalists, a lot of people are going to single out straight away and say, ah, look, they're great loot taggers in World vs. World. One of the ways you can rate classes for World vs. World is purely on how many tags they get. Tags don't just give you loot, but they also help you uniformly push out more damage in your Zerg and can be useful for winning encounters. Guardian is at the top of that pile. Staff 1 is ridiculous. It cleaves 5 targets across a massive area, and every time you press skill 1, which has a short cast time, no travel speed to deal with, it's instantly procs on people, and a low aftercast, Guardian is way up there. A lot of people rate Elementalists highly too, because Elementalists can cast Meteor Showers. Meteor Showers are one of those cool, sort of unique skills in that they get around the 5-man limit. Many abilities in Guild Wars 2 only hit 5 people at once, but Meteor Shower, because it summons a bunch of literal meteors that land, each individual meteor can hit 5 people, and there are around 20 or so meteors that land, each with its own 5-man limit. Because there's so much movement, you're probably going to get a lot of tags. I still don't rate it that highly though. Meteor Shower has a long cast time where you cannot move because so much of the combat is mobile here. To stop and actually cast that Meteor Shower, either your Zerg's moved on and now you're out of position, or their Zerg's moved on and the meteors aren't doing anything. And also it has a very high cooldown along with the long cast time. So yes, it's good while it's up, but a lot of the time it's very situational in its use. What else does Ellie have available to it for tagging? The auto attack in Fire attunement isn't really that great because unlike Guardians, it doesn't necessarily cleave 5 people, not over such a huge range, and it has a travel time. It's a slow moving meteor that takes a while to find its mark, and often it's too late. For example, if you're not trying to tag a player, let's say you're just trying to tag a lord in a tower or a veteran that's guarding a camp, the time it takes you to cast that Fire 1, as it's flying through the air, before it even lands, the NPC could be dead. Or worse, if it's a player, they're dead, and then when it finally does land, it hits them while they're invulnerable as they've just swapped into downstate. I actually find Elementalists really kind of difficult to score tags on. Some people talk about the fact that dropping lots of fields will help you get tags. Say you drop a chill field and it chills a lot of the players, that will get you many tags. But on my specific build for today, where I was doing so low damage, my loot was abysmal. If you look at the footage in the background right now, you will see what I got for an hour of gameplay in World vs. World. It was not fantastic. And this was while continually defending a keep from the efforts of 2 servers trying to take it, occasionally leaving to resupply. We left once or twice to go for another tower. So, I mean, it was kind of fun. If you care about loot, though, the healing power route, especially the way that I did it, I'm not so sure in. Another issue with the build that I was running that I think made it less fun than it could have been was I was not in a party, and so whenever I dropped these giant heal fields, there's so much chaos going on, you can't specifically see which player you've healed up there. You can see on your own health bar that you've just healed massively, but it's sort of thankless and it's sort of difficult to see the impact that you're having. The last nail in the coffin really for it, for me, which is probably why I won't run healing power again on an Elementalist, is if you drop a water field and someone else blasts in it, which is the primary use for them, it doesn't matter what your healing power is, their blast will scale off of their healing power. And so the majority of the heal that you get out of the water fields when your commander calls for them has nothing to do with your healing power in the first place. So interesting, but very little loot, kind of thankless. I doubt I'll play it again. There are a couple of other cool things, despite the fact we were only defending Bay this entire time, which, as I say, I found immensely fun, became much more interesting when we had underwater combat. Underwater combat is not something anyone cares for in PvE or structured player versus player. In fact, in structured players versus player, they've removed it as much as they possibly can from the game. It is something I do not experience that much, and here today, there will be footage of this. We had multiple large fights underwater. It's clearly not something typical of a World versus World experience, because people were saying in comms, giving tips to people on how to use their underwater skills. Players go through Guild Wars 2, get to level 80, spend tons of time in World versus World, and actually have no idea what their underwater ability to do. And so people were offering tips. They were saying things like, oh, on the Elementalist you can summon your elite because this sucks everyone in and it tags a lot of things. That's a really good one to use. And largely I knew what I was doing. I was pretty quick on my feet to say drop the static fields you get for the underwater version and so forth. It was a lot of fun though. I don't think the combat necessarily was amazing, but it was a bit of a gimmick. You know, you don't get to experience underwater combat that much, and here we were doing giant Zerg v Zerg stuff in a three-dimensional space with entirely new skill bars. For me, at least, the novelty of that really brightened up the experience. Another cool moment was when we left the keep, leaving just a few scouts behind to tell us if any Zergs were coming, so that we could go to a supply camp and resupply. We did this, and on our return, we found an enemy Zerg had snuck in. They couldn't quite take the keep itself, but they were waiting for us. And quite cleverly, I don't know how common this is, but this was very cool to see, they supply trapped the hell out of the inside of the keep. This is an item, if you guys don't World vs. World that much, that was added kind of recently. They added two types of traps. They added like a new vendor that sells tricks and traps. I don't think there are any tricks in the game at the moment, but they added these two items. One of them is a de-stealthing trap, which is ultimately rather useless. But the other one is a supply trap. It's invisible to you as your Zerg, but if you walk on it, everyone in a huge area has their supply drained. So we had just gone to a camp to get supply so we could build more arrow carts and get our siege, fortify our position a little bit. And in the meantime, an enemy Zerg snuck in, laid all these traps down, and as we charged through, trying to kill them, they baited us through them. And pretty much cost us the entire trip to the supply camp. It was really cinematic as well as it happened, because each supply trap summons is this like giant tornado with a bunch of debris in it, and you could just see them popping off all over the place. Really quite cool. And it was nice to see that happening, like another level of gameplay going on to what is otherwise running around spamming abilities and just listening out for very basic calls like dropping a fire field and blasting and running in the direction of the commander. Despite everything I've said here about how fun I found it today, I've got to say this wasn't that different to what I have experienced in lower tiers. In fact, I still think some of my most interesting experiences with Giant Zergs was in Season 1 on Emery Bay. We were not at the very bottom of the pile in Season 1, and there was just as much big Zerg v Zerg scale combat. This actually wasn't as night and day of a difference as I was expecting it to be. One thing that was a big difference was queue times. The funny thing is, at the start of this video, I'd recorded that small segment where I said, oh, I'm waiting to go in, I'm going to spam F on this portal. Actually, reset happened while I was talking to you guys at the beginning of the video. So I stopped recording and then immediately realized I'd missed the start of reset and had to queue to get in my map. This was a little bit salty for me because I was looking for an additional thing in World vs. World, which is a hidden ghost that only spawns once per matchup. For the entire week, it will only spawn once, and I really needed to get in early to get footage of it, which I missed. So it was quite frustrating, but it was interesting to me that I was like 38 in queue because I was still quite early to the portal, and it still took me well over an hour to get in. Those queues really do go down very slowly if you're playing immediately on reset, and it meant that by the time I finally got in, the map state was as I've been describing in this video. It was, oh, we only have one keep, everything else is, all the neutral stuff, for example, has already been taken. I missed that big rush out of the door, and we are well and truly into the 2v1 situation, and it feels like the matchup's already been decided for us very early. I was saying at the start of this video that, you know, it could take well into the week at least before it's decided, but I think people are generally giving up. I was told by a friend that the queue size for this particular matchup was much lower than normal. Usually on tier 1 it would be much higher, and instead we're hovering around 50 or so instead, as people have become fatigued. Probably not just on the Blackgate side of things, but on the other sides too. That said, as much as it sucks having to wait to play the game, queuing is much better than it was this time last year. Let's face it, at least I could run around, do stuff in PvE while I was waiting, and when the queue finally popped, I was there to just click it and head into the map. I can only hope that this is eventually going to change for Mega Servers 2, and then we will be happy everywhere. Anyway, there you go, guys. That's really all I wanted to talk about. Just a bit of a casual impression on my introduction to World vs. World, how World vs. World generally feels right now, just from my very limited knowledge on it right now. And maybe I'll do another update at some point. I'll definitely be talking about the Ghost in an upcoming video, but for me, that's going to have to be another week of waiting so that I can get in right as the servers pop, so I can actually go and see the damn thing. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, guys. Let me know what you think about World vs. World. Are you on Jade Quarry or Tarnished Coast. I'd love to hear your opinions, and namely what you think the devs can do to change this. Don't forget, there's no point complaining about stuff unless you actually have a solution in mind. Is it just a matter of changing the way that the tournament is structured, or are we looking at actual gameplay changes in World vs. World 2? And that's another point as well. Are you guys generally satisfied with the state of World vs. World, or do you want more things to shake it up? Has the Bloodlust change been enough over the past year, or do you want more interesting things? Namely, stuff in Edge of the Mists was originally stated to be like a testing ground for things they could eventually implement into regular World vs. World. Is it time for that, or do you hate a lot of the Edge of the Mist stuff, as apparently many World vs. Worlders do? Anyway, thanks guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you tomorrow for character speculations. I'll catch you then.